Hey, welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. I'm your host, Una Duncan. And before we start, I just want to quickly check in and make sure that you have a massive inheritance coming your way. No? Okay, how about this? Do you know exactly how much money you need? And have you invested it so that you don't have to worry about money anymore? And if you're like, yes, duh, Una, of course, I eat dividend payouts for breakfast, chomp, chomp, then you are going to love my next guest. And if you're like, no, I actually feel a little bit wobbly on my financial plans, to be honest. And I kind of don't know how to fix that without winning the lottery. Then, dude, you are going to love her even more. I am so excited to share this conversation that I had with Ann Wilson, the wealth chef. So Ann began her career as a civil engineer, and she was managing billion-dollar projects all over the world. So as you can imagine, that's the kind of shit that pays pretty well. And yet Ann was swimming in debt. So she then began a journey to not just like get paid well, but to create actual financial freedom for herself. And now her mission is to empower other people to do the same thing. Her best-selling book is called The Wealth Chef, and 100% of her royalties go to the Small Enterprise Foundation, which is dedicated to eradicating poverty by empowering women through microloans combined with financial literacy. In this conversation, we talk about how she went from being in debt to financially free in 8 freaking years, dude, and what you can do if you wouldn't mind maybe hitting that goal. Ann has been featured in the Sunday Times, in Glamour and Cosmopolitan magazines, the Huffington Post, and CNBC, among many others. And dude, I can't believe I got her on the show because I'm kind of obsessed with her, and you are about to see why. Oh, and make sure you check out the links for the show because she gave a gift to you, a Wealth Made Simple training for you to find out your unique financial freedom number and to understand what you need to be investing to create it. Are you ready for this? Okay, here's Ann.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Ann Wilson, the Wealth Chef, is here. Thank you so much for being here, Ann.
It is such a joy. I mean, firstly, to connect with you from our 2 wild places, to talk about maybe the wildest topic, with its wealth, money, making it sexy and fun. I mean, how cool is this? So I can't wait to dive in.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, well, let's do it. And I want to take you back to your 20s when you were drowning in debt. So what was the turning point that made you realize, okay, this can't go on. I need to change my relationship with money?
I had absolutely followed what I thought was the road to success, doing the right thing. You know, my father had died when I was relatively young. I'd watched my mother, who had always been the family keeper, the one managing the money day to day, but that classic model of the man looking after the future financial well-being, maybe the wife or the woman handling the house. And I was number 5 of 6 kids. So there was very much go study, get a good job. But I also then saw my mother struggling after my father died, really confused about who did she trust? This anxiety of now managing the bigger picture of the money after almost society has told us, don't worry about that stuff. You know, somebody else will look after it. And so the only thing she knew how to do was hope somebody else would look after it. Go to a financial industry, a financial advisor, outsource that with a small pot of money. But this vulnerability of, do I even know what funds I'm in? How much are being charged? Will it be enough? So I thought, well, I never want to be that vulnerable. And so this fierce independence that almost comes out of trauma often for many people. Well, I'm not going to rely on anybody else. I must look after myself. So I would almost say an anxiety-driven independence rather than a enlivened or joy or confidence-based side drove me to choose to do engineering, because I thought, well, shit, that's what blokes did, and they seem to have their shizzle better sorted than women. So hopefully that will make it, I'll be okay in that area. But as we now know, I mean, how you earn your money has got nothing to do with creating wealth. And I didn't know that, because everything I'd been taught was earn well and then you'll be okay. But very quickly, that came with that earning well, came all of the offers of, well, you needed to drive a certain car, live in a certain house, get the store card to have the furniture, get the accounts from the clothing store, because, well, that's what then goes with being successful. And so this is how I also spiraled into debt. It was like this unconscious script that I thought, well, that's just what you did. You got the car loan, you got that. And it was really, one day I sort of woke up in this deep desire to have adventures and experience. And I realized there was nothing left. And almost quite a shameful day came when I realized I had nothing left, and I still had, I had more month than money. And I stole toilet paper from the company I was working for. I snuck the toilet paper out, and I was like going, what the hell? And this deep anxiety that I was wanting to avoid by getting a good job working, well, not because I gave a damn about that. I actually didn't particularly enjoy it at all. So, well, that's not working. And I realized that if something happened to that job, I would not be able to survive very long. And I think for us all the key thing for me is going, do we look up? Do we look up at the consequences of just assuming, oh, well, that job's always going to be there, that's going to flow in? I think a lot of people saw that when the pandemic hit. There's no guarantee. And I had no base or net around it, because also my money decisions were very short. They were, what's the minimum repayment? Looking at this money coming in, money going out, because I actually had never been taught any other way to, how do I make financial plans and goals, as opposed to just, hey, the things I'd like to do. So it was in that deep sense of, I'm in shit here. I'm working for everybody else except me. If something were to happen to this job, I'm not going to last more than a few days. And being South African, I grew up at the height of apartheid. And this was at the deep part of the end of apartheid. Mandela was being freed from prison. It was going into its first free and fair elections. And there was this sort of liberation movement. And I thought, well, there are people doing really brave things for freedom, for their life. And I'm anything but free. And it was that moment I realized I had to do something differently. I had to make my sense of well-being, first and foremost, safety, and then even my liberation, the things that I wanted to do, more important than the external drivers. And something just clicked deeply in me around this whole sort of, nobody else is here to live my life or rescue me. And so that was a first point that I went, hang on, okay, there's another step. It doesn't matter what you earn, but if you don't get a balance, and where is that going? And so I made this choice to say, I'm going to choose me. And then I made it a game, which was very key, to go, I'm not depriving myself. I'm giving myself a gift of changing this. How can I make it? What else can I do? And so that climbing out of a debt hole was really when I could make it as a gift to myself and project beyond the struggle and the negotiation and the deprivation. And I think this has become really key for me in all areas of my life. If I needed to create a strong, compelling future post the outcome of that shorter term goal, which then really made me go, hey, this is just a short term period because that's what I'm going to do. So that was getting out of the debt element and then staying debt free. And one of the things there is no place in a wealthy life for consumer debt. It just isn't there. There isn't a sort of, for me, it's like crack cocaine. If you want to have a healthy life, it's better not to be putting that in your veins. And, I really look forward to a day when we can have healthy conversations around being consumer debt free. Now, this is completely different from what I call expansion debt or neutral debt, because the challenge is we're also not taught the nuances around money in these four aspects. I know you've just asked me about debt, but one of the key things that I hadn't learned, that income is one thing. We're taught to worship at the altar of income. If my business can just earn more, I'll be okay. If I can just earn more, get that better job. And then the debt principle is, okay, stay out of debt. All debt's bad. But there's two other key components. And this was a big problem. I got out of debt, but I hadn't learned about investing, what actually was going to create freedom. And I hadn't fully understood that my wealthy life was created by how I spent money, not how I earned it. And so that was the next sort of chapter that came.
This episode is brought to you by the Masters of Fitness Awesomeness program. Here's someone who wants to tell you what that is.
I'm Julie. I joined the MFA in May 2022. Before MFA, I was a mom who suffered a burnout. Life was just generally not great. Since I joined MFA, I'm back to a weight that I knew pre-babies back a decade ago. I'm doing things I never thought I would do. So to anyone considering joining, just do it. You have nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. It's amazing.
Wow. There's so many things that you touched on there. One of them being that I realized that no one was coming to rescue me. And I've heard that before. And tell me if you agree or if you think this is sexist, but I've heard that especially women have a little bit of a white knight syndrome, maybe especially around money, waiting for someone to come and deal with this for them.
And I think this is such an important topic, because to also destigmatize the shame around it, as freedom fighter, as someone who sees myself as part of the female liberation movement, fiercely a fighter of the underdog, to also sit with this deep socialized programming, intergenerational programming of around money. Research shows over and over, often women handle the shorter term financial aspects. So a budget from the household, looking after, making sure everyone's okay, food and shelter, food. And so we've been socialized for a much shorter framework of money management. And there's a sort of story around that the longer term financial well-being will typically go to the more, let's call it the more masculine energy. So even let's look at the energies around this. So the more feminine is seen as the nurturer, the prayer looking after the shorter term well-being. And this was a huge challenge that I had to overcome. And even the shame of it, even admitting that there was a little part of me that just wished somebody else would look after this shit. And this resistance of it. And so, I got out of debt. I then got married to somebody who was even in worse debt. We managed to get him out of it. And there was this tension that we had no idea how to also speak about money in a big way. How are we going to manage it? What are our visions? And then what to do around it. And so I very much went to contraction around, well, if I spend less, but ability to go, well, what does my longer term financial well-being look like? Versus, oh, well, you meant to put some money away for retirement. How boring. Okay, I've got more time to deal with that. Versus this relationship between what do we spend and how do we manage our spend planning, which I prefer to use, versus a budget, versus this medium and longer term well-being. And the stories, as you say, the white knight syndrome, we are fed stories, movies, societal elements that almost success as a woman is finding someone who handles that stuff so we can just get on and do the living, And that almost, so a big element of, for me, a challenge, and I know for so many of my clients now, is this permission piece to feel like you're not cheating, or is something wrong with you if you now take responsibility. It's not a failure. You haven't failed to find that, that white knight, but also that this compassion to know that this is this deep socialized program, because almost to do it is to say, I have full agency in this element, is threatening and can feel a threat. And also there's a side, because it can feel so scary, there's a lovely story that somebody else is there to catch you if you really fuck up. So when we truly just take agency, we realize, no, we're far more empowered when we can be at the helm. And it's not about, I need no one. If we actually look at relationships, when two parties can come in full agency and discuss around investing and take full responsibility, there's no passive aggressive underlying elements or expectations. It's one of the most devastating areas. And so absolutely, I think a huge element is this permission piece to first just recognize that programming, then to go, oh, okay, then to sit in the grief that nobody's coming, and then dive deeper in that grief and go and find the joy and go, oh, the reason why it's nobody's coming and the reason why is because I've never needed to be rescued. We don't need to be rescued in this area. We've absolutely can do this. And what a wonderful liberation to drop into that, because we were the one we were always looking for. And we were here.
I love that so much. And I think this applies to not even just money, but, we're both in, online business, in the business world. So many people are looking for, please, I just need the one guru, the one coach that's going to help my business catch fire. And in fitness, it's like, I just need a personal trainer to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, actually, you're the one.
The perfect exercise. One of the reasons I love the money conversation, the money story, is as a mirror in so many aspects of our life. Because money literally weaves through every aspect of our life, our sense of well-being, identity, our ability to express, our relationships with other people, our sense of worthiness, permission piece, our aspects around what we can and can't have, what's fair and not fair. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful opportunity to look. And as you say, where do we look in life for something to rescue us versus then, okay, you know what? It's up to me. And then we come to consistency. Can we learn it? What's the behaviors? All of those elements. So completely nobody's coming.
Okay, so let me take you back to your story. So you got out of debt by contracting your spending, and then you said the next step was to sort of stop thinking, okay, just like stick within a spending plan, but it's now to start thinking medium to long range and really think about. And you said it was beyond just like, well, I should probably save for retirement because that's boring. How did you shift from retirement savings to, ooh, I'm going to grow my wealth and this is really delicious and fun?
And this was key because at this point, I was still in the, if I can just work harder and get a good income, and if I can avoid debt at all costs, then I'll be okay. Now I've got it sorted. And this is super important because we need money flowing in our life. Here's the thing. Money's not bad. We have to have it in. It's like food, oxygen. It's just one of the inputs, but it literally is just an input. So we need an inflow, but I had never fully understood that the full arc. Just the inflow is one part of the story. The healthy money flow, as I call it now, is how does money flow through your life as it comes in, and then where do you direct it to? And so at that point in my life, I was just going, oh, well, if I can contract myself enough, if I can have no desires and needs, then hopefully if I can reduce the outflow, that contracted spending, so I can save more, because I had no clue about investing. I was still just, you save, stay out of debt. But this was the problem. The quality of my money flowing through my life was depleting. It was a thing that just actually contracted my soul, my being. And we see this in a lot of relationships. So that often can be for many of us who maybe have some money traumas. We can feel, well, if I can just control myself. So really interesting, you talk about eating healthy or exercise. Well, if I can control my eating, if I can just not eat, no calories, and I'll be okay. Or and it can be quite a punishing energy rather than, hey, I get to direct this money in my life as a resource, just like my time, my energy, my calories. What's the quality of that? And is it going to the things that are generative, that serve me and lift me up? So I'm going a lot of leaps down the line, but that was only come from now the years of really going into the depths of it. So at this point, I was just, well, let's just spend as little as I can. And that meant, can I control myself? And so I was becoming unhappier and unhappier in my relationship. It was everything about what we couldn't do, not what we could. But directly linked to that was because I had no idea how much was enough. And I think this is a huge challenge for most of us. We've never been taught that there actually is an enough point. Not just a kind of, oh, well, settle and don't be greedy and settle for enough, but what did I actually want from my life? Well, how did I want to be living, rather than this pervasive story that we're told that success is just more. If you get more in, you should just consume more. And then, well, you can go on more expensive holidays and you can have more homes and let's have 17 baths. I mean, how many baths can any one girl, lie in at any one night? And so there was no aspect of there was actually a destination. I just knew that I wanted to feel less worried about money. I just wanted to feel safer. I wanted to feel that I could do more, but I had no idea, well, what did that mean practically? So what did that mean in terms of how much money did I need? Assets invested that could pay for that lifestyle. And so this is a massive issue. We're not taught what financial freedom is or financial liberation is, where essentially, so let me dive in. We're financially free when we have enough investments, assets that can pay for the lifestyle we choose. So this is really important. There's a lifestyle that we need to choose and decide on, which is going to have a price tag. And this is a radical thinking because, like so many people, I thought I just spent what I earned and that defined my lifestyle. Instead of having to go, well, sweetie pie, what the bleep do you want? You mean I can say what life I want? And this is huge. I mean, I love so much of your story where you've experimented going, well, let's go and try out living in different places. What do we want? And I think as women and just as people, we are socialized into just, oh, well, what's available and scrapping rather than actually designing our life and then going, what's the price tag? So that then just starts defining, well, how much is enough? And because I had no idea what that was, the whole pattern was, well, I'll just keep hoarding and hoping that at some point I'll feel like there's enough. I had no idea when that could be, how much that was. And so that sense of desperation is that when do I actually get to live the life I want? And I think this devastating sense of depression, anxiety, stress that we see is this disconnect from, well, what am I doing this for? Am I just keeping churning on? And so it really did all blow up into this big, messy money drama where my marriage and the money I was saving, like holding on to, walked out the door. And the very anxiety that I was trying to avoid was there because I had no idea what it was even for, that there was a goal or a target and that never-ending pace. And that a lot of despair and depression is often a sense of there's no end, there's no goal. How do I even measure, am I making progress or not? And it was at that point, I sat around feeling sorry for myself a bit, but I was sitting in Hong Kong. I was getting a good job. I'd moved now around as an engineer. And there was enough sanity in me and luckily enough self-compassion to go, okay, after all the beating myself up, how have I got into this place side, to go, hang on, you know what? I don't think I'm that dim. I'm doing a relative amount. There must just be something I'm missing. And I think this crack, and this is, I think, so key when we're finding ourselves not getting the results we want or we don't know, to slow down enough to go, what else? Is there just another perspective? Because I think it's so easy to just get caught, and especially in the money thing, well, let me just work harder. Let me deprive myself more. Let me work harder. Let me deprive myself more. But Anne, I'm hustling. That hustle culture is just, and so I really stopped and said, maybe there's somewhere I'm not looking. And I'd never been exposed to investing. There was an aspect of, oh, well, there was some retirement funds that maybe your company took off your paycheck. But that was also something I'd never been exposed to. That, or maybe you outsourced to a financial advisor that sold you some product, you had no idea what it was, and they had been a little bit of that patting on your head. Don't worry, someone else will look after you. Oh, thank God, and you continue. So that would be, and then I thought, hang on, maybe there's something here. And that's when I really started researching what is investing. understanding that having equity, so investing in the stock market, was not actually in the stock market. Oh my gosh, that just means owning great companies. Shit, that's quite cool. I can be a shareholder in a company that I don't have to pitch up for, work for. I benefit in the profit of that company and its growth. That sounds like a bonus. And so I dived into saying, let me learn. And this curiosity of going, wow. And it felt like I was cheating. I was delving into an area that someone like me didn't. I was this blonde woman. I knew nothing about it. A little bit scary. Like I was trespassing. There was those kind of blokes, men that did that. But I thought, fuck it, there's something in it. Yeah. And so I first learned equity investing, then real estate, then low input business. I realized there was this whole realm of what I now call the world of wealth, of asset generated wealth that I knew nothing about. But the key thing was that I needed to understand these other components, because just investing, just getting assets isn't going to create a wealthy life. And we can dive into what I mean by that as well. But that was that next key step, understanding, I needed to know what I want so I could define a price tag, which could then calculate what's the value of the assets I need. And now suddenly, the liberation of finally having a destination, because now I could put a plan together. Now it was just this who knows when. Now there was something to aim for and get excited about.
But my question about that, Anne, is I feel like the lifestyle you would picture and the price tag you would come up with for that, doesn't that change as you evolve? So what I want to ask you right now, so by my notes, you achieved financial freedom by the age of 38, which is unbelievable. And right now, so first of all, you said that one of the ways that you changed your mindset was being drawn towards a compelling future versus having this miserly approach to being like, no, I just need to hoard and hoard. So first of all, I'd love for you to describe your lifestyle right now so that you can help people imagine a compelling future, which may or may not have some relationship to what they want. But also I'm curious, is it the future that you had pictured when you went on this journey and achieved it by 38?
Absolutely. So right now, my lifestyle, and in this journey, I picked up another husband, got rid of him as well. So been through a few of those, not too many, but that's another side journey. So right now I live my primary home, although I have a few and I'm about to explore in Europe. I live in African bush. I live in a game reserve, a nature reserve, one of the most iconic game reserves in the world, called the Kruger National Park. And I have no fences around me. So I was just saying to an elephant had just walked past my door. And so, yeah, elephants and lions and elements. And it's the most extraordinary privilege. Conservation, the wilderness, wildlife is deeply important to me. And so I have a beautiful home. I love art and I get to see friends. And I also still travel a fair amount, a lot less than I used to pre-COVID, I think, for many of us. And I get to run a business from wherever I want, literally here, serving amazing people. And I've just had a team meeting. And so I still get to contribute and add value whilst having fun. I go on game drives, but we'll be in a month or so's time, I'm going to be heading off to Portugal and then Italy. And, but at its core, coming back to that question, what was that vision of that life? I knew I wanted to spend time exploring the wonders of this world. I wanted to be able to contribute to things that have meaning to me. And for me, that's the earth, it's conservation, it's the environment, and this privilege of being able to use money for good. And really clear that there's a lot of people who pay lip service, but if you're not financially empowered, you will be overpowered. And we need financial resources to shift and move things. I want to travel and explore. I also wanted to get to know who I am and have more of the time to feel that. And so I continued. And so, I became financially free. So within 8 years of really making that decision, I had enough assets that could pay for the lifestyle at that time. So this is important. So yes, it shifted. So my my chosen lifestyle does shift and evolve, and I allow that to be because we do, some goals we have at one time, we might complete in that. But what might be interesting to you, Una, the price tag of my lifestyle has actually gone up even less than inflation. It's basically stayed the same in about the last 12 years. Now, my net worth continues to grow. The amount of money my assets earn continues to grow. And so now my goal is how much more can I have available for me to put to conservation elements? Because I have been able to separate my money and how much comes into my life from what I spend. Because I'm truly comfortable with my life. So there's well, I've got X amount in, so let's go on a fancier holiday. And that incredible freedom to separate out the choices I make about how I spend my time from the money I have. But I had to get to the point where I had more money than the choices that I want. But I think it's such an important story because often we're told that financial success is going on a certain, we should be going on more and more expensive holidays. We should be spending, and there's no shaming on this, but I'm really clear. I know, and I've slowed down enough to know what I enjoy. And I also really appreciate the value of money. And so I'm still I'm value conscious. I wouldn't say price conscious. I'm value conscious because the gift of money and the gift of having the privilege to be a great custodian to it is a gift. I see it as seeds that it's my responsibility to make sure that I nurture it and get value from it in every way. And then where I get to direct it is a responsibility. So, this link between lifestyle. And so when I think back where I started, the energy of my desired lifestyle is very aligned. And so when we start envisioning what we want and vision boards, yes, absolutely. Put the yacht there or the first class business travel or a certain kind of home. But I think what's so super important is to slow down and go, well, what's the emotion I want to feel underneath that? And go, because this also allows us to recognize when we're achieving that, the packaging might look different, but the content is there. And so you speak about the evolution of that. I always love the idea of having time in the bush. But when I was, starting this journey in my early 30s, there was no way I could, my mind couldn't even visualize owning a home this large, as far large in the middle of the bush that I lived in. But the essence was I wanted to spend time in the wild, in the bush, contribute to that. And so I think this is the essence of when we're doing goal setting, visioning, planning, to also know we're allowed to change it. And so a lot of people get very afraid of going, oh, but Anne, if I say that this is my goal and my lifestyle that I want and I work out my price tag, is that it? Am I locked into that? And for many of us who've got a high freedom value, just committing to something can feel very scary. But this is the paradox. Freedom means we have to choose. This is the paradox of freedom. A lot of people think freedom is just endless options and choices. So when we come to investing, when we come to manage our money, often a lot of people don't want to lock down a regular, consistent investment amount. Oh, well, I'll see what's left. And this is the paradox, to truly be able to have the kind of relationship and intimacy we want. It means we have to commit. We have to walk through a door and commit. If we truly want a certain life, we have to commit. That's the nature of life. So freedom, there's so many paradoxes here, is through that door of commitment to something, but also knowing we're allowed to shift and change, and it can evolve. But when we can say, well, at least this is a vision and I'm going to experiment and walk down that path, but now at least I can start putting a plan in place. I can say, well, I think my net worth is, $2 million, let's say, because that will give me X amount of income based on an income generating asset. Great. Let me start with that. it's not going to mean that's where you're limited to. And many people, as they start going, well, actually, I thought that's what I really wanted, but actually I don't. And I think when we slow down enough and really connect in with our souls, for most people, their price tag and what they want is less, not more.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah. And it strikes me that I love that you were saying the freedom, the paradoxes of that. It reminds me when I was in acting school, my very scary and mean professor used to always yell at us, freedom within discipline. And what he meant is like, the more you rehearse this scene, the more you will be able to have emotional freedom within it because you already know where the blocking is, you know your lines. Yeah. And in fitness, I wouldn't say freedom within discipline. I would say freedom within structure. Because if you want to never think about your fitness again, you need solid habits you don't even think about because you just do them all the time. They become, automatic. So I hadn't thought about it with money, but I really like that you brought that up.
I love that. I love what you said, freedom within structure, because often people think this is about discipline. It's about white knuckling it. It's about forcing yourself. And when it comes to, there's so many parallels with this, with health and fitness. So I'll say frameworks create freedom because it is exactly that. And as I say, the structures, it doesn't have to be discipline. I'm not freaking disciplined at all. And I realized very early in my journey that I needed to find ways to protect myself from me. And so the more I can automate things, so automated savings processes, automated investing. So by following something that you can do consistency, and then when we can use automation to help us be more consistent, it's actually being great with money is actually way easier than being healthy and fit and stuff.
Totally. Because you really, some machine's going to really do it for you. It's exactly what we all want, right?
Exactly.
And it's funny because, Anne, like you are pretty wild. Like you love adventure. You love freedom. When I look at your bio, it's like you rode a motorcycle across Australia. You love adventure travel. You don't seem like the kind of girl who likes being told what to do. And so it's very much the opposite of what we think of fiscal responsibility. Yeah.
And I think when we can, what you've just said, frameworks create freedom. I have been able to link my financial habits as an enabler of my freedom. So it's a means to enable that. And I think when we can also look at where's that resistance. I actually had a friend WhatsApping me a few days ago going, Anne, I'm really good at making money, but I just don't seem to be able to keep it. Is there anything you can work with? And I said, well, great. Just do an exercise. Let's find out, what does money mean to you? What does money mean to you? What does investing mean to you? What does being money management? What does wealth mean to you? What is rich? And what is it not? Investing isn't. And often it can be that sense, it's a burden, it's restricting, it's about not having, it's now cumbersome. A few years ago, I realized I was hitting quite a ceiling in my net worth and areas. And I realized that I had a sort of threshold that above that felt like it was a bigger responsibility than I wanted. It felt more burdensome, that somehow it would start limiting and taking more time and, oh my God. And there was just this barrier. So when I hit those, I have to really come back and go, okay, firstly, how can I simplify to make it easier? And to really be careful of our propensity when we've got a challenge to look at the bias towards additive. As humans, there's a lot of research being shown we add things where we want to add more reps. So there's a problem. How do we get more money? We add the SOP and we want to add a solution. We got to, instead of going, okay, I've got to bear what do I need to take away? What complexity do I need to take away? What do I need to remove? And then how do I automate? What can I do to move that barrier that can feel like a burden? Because if now our investing and our money management is just another thing on a already too busy, to-do list. And for those of us who love to save a life and get out and do, and as you say, I've just ridden a motorbike through British Columbia, which was friggin' amazing. And there were some of those roads were damn scary, but it was mind blowing. And whatever that is, it's so this, how do we simplify? And really this key element is, okay, I choose to do this for this purpose. And the same in health and fitness. The more we're able to look at the delayed gratification, but also bring forward the future benefit. And so using visualizations, seeing that life, for a lot of people getting out of debt, it can feel, tough doing that work. Using practices of visualization, remembering why you're doing it, use that gamification of small successes and wins, rewards in between really helps. And then celebrating, like going, so you can stack it on and go, oh shit, I did that hard work there and look what I've got now. What's that next goal? And I think the last little one here, because I know I'm talking about, but there's so much in it and there's so many parallels, is really knowing that if I look back in my life and I look forward, we need challenges as humans. It makes us find out who we are. If we think we have this one part of program that thinks we want it all easy, that we want to get to this point where there's no challenge, there's all the money we need in our life, there's endless, infinite choice. We'll just sit around daiquiris on the beach. But actually, when we go in, we go, that's absolutely not what we want. It's not the stuff that we come back feeling alive and awake, like, fuck, I did that, even if in the moment. And so I think this is why I also do the things like climbing Kilimanjaro or going on a scary motorbike or doing hikes. And many of them, sometimes when I'm in it, I will go, what the bleep am I doing? Why the hell did I do this? Because it's always afterwards I realize, wow, that sense of achievement. And so when I have a financial goal, I also remember that there will come a time where I'll look back and be deeply grateful because who I'm going to find out about myself. So yeah, the ability to delay gratification, bring future benefits forward, and just remember as humans and gamify. And I think the last thing, there's so much more to say, but I remind myself I get to do it. I don't have to. There's no obligation for any of us to have great financial well-being. There's no moral judgment. Nobody's going to go, oh, well, Anne's living in a gutter on the bench. Actually, no one gives a shit. It's my life to live. So I go, there's no obligation here. I get to do this. And I get to then experience the consequences of those choices, whatever they are. I could deem them good, bad, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just a set of consequences. And I get to choose it and do it. And that's the ultimate freedom, is we get to do it. We don't have to.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned that we actually like challenges more than we think we do. And I'm always telling my clients this because often people will say like, I just want to have a break from all this, fitness, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you might think you do, but you probably don't. Because I tell them, remember March 2020, everyone was sitting on the couch, drinking too much, binging, everyone's freaking out. So and the world was so stressful that everyone gave themselves permission to relax, to just indulge, to do whatever felt good in the moment. And I'm like, how'd that go for you guys? You probably did not feel good about that. We want challenges. We want to rise to them. And that's what makes us actually feel good. And I think you're so right about that. And that is with money. That is with business. That is with fitness for sure. One question, and when you said no one gives a shit, I still find that there's a lot of shame about money in two ways. If people are not feeling very successful, they're very shameful of that. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. I don't want anyone to know how irresponsible I am with money, et cetera, et cetera. Or if they are successful, I find there's shame there too. And, I don't know if this is the same where you are, but at least where I am, there's growing income disparity and there's growing resentment towards people who are wealthy. What would you say about that, the shame on both sides there and that resentment?
It's such a beautiful damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so, money is such a beautiful magnifier of where we're not yet free in ourselves. To go at its core, we can often talk about freedom of choice and do these things. But I think at the end of the day, all of us are seeking a way to how can we be okay with who we are, where we're not yet free. Where do we feel we need to perform or please or appease or hide? And so, yes, at one level, we all actually are so nervous about ourselves. So when I say no one gives a shit, But there is, of course, we want to belong and fit in, and the tribal elements inside. So this journey of the choices I'm making with my time, energy, and money, those are 3 ingredients we're given as the gift of life to create our world. Where are we coming from? Is that driver to do that thing in order to try and get that validation externally, to finally fit in, to be worthy of love, to feel we've ticked off, to not make anybody else uncomfortable, to appease the kids, to have the right Instagram feed so we're deemed worthy? Or is it as an expression of our already innate worthiness, of the life that we've been given? Is it a desire that comes out as an expression? And I think when we slow down for most of us and really go, I think life is generally generative. There is less voracious consuming out of lack. Because when we try and fill up our worthiness and our enoughness externally of us, you never can. It's insatiable because there's always going to be that next thing, that FOMO, that judgment. So I'm going a little bit woo-woo here, but so there's this in versus out. And so I think a huge journey is, again, from whence is this desire coming from? Am I trying to meet a need outside of me, or to please or pacify? Am I feeling unsafe, not okay? Or is it, shit, I want to create this business because I want to contribute this and that, and then using the money as where's our money flow through? Because money itself has no meaning. It has no energy. It has got it's just an exchange. We create the energy around, and we literally given the privilege of where it goes. And so from whence it comes, not the money, but the energetic direction of where it goes to, expands that thing. So if we are coming from lack about ourselves and our worthiness, or judging, or feeling we have to, it will just magnify and perpetuate that. And I think there's this deep anxiety, deep not enoughness is being magnified around it. Now, I live in a place where there could be possibly more socioeconomic disparity. One of the reasons I choose to still be in Africa, I've lived all over the world, is every day I get reminded the privilege of having options and choices and money. I also know that we don't live in a fair world. And I'm not using that as a sort of judgment. This aspect of needing to believe that there's some flat line where the world is. I get to watch, animals. People in a month or so, all the impalas will be dropping their babies. There will be some impala babies that will live less than a day because they'll be eaten. Is that fair? It's got nothing to do with fair. It's just life. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot of horrible injustice and disparity, but when we can go, okay, there are so many people that I get to see who've been dealt a hand that is not fair. And so when we can also, not fair as in that level. So what am I trying to say here? There's a challenge around this judgment at a very surface level around needing to give value, who's got money as a value judgment, or who doesn't as some value judgment. We'll use words of, that person deserves it or doesn't deserve it. It's got nothing to do with deserving. It's just certain people have learnt patterns and rules and how to get money working for them or not. It's a learned skill. And yes, some in pretty unethical, greedy ways, and others in generative ways. But we have to, it doesn't make the money bad. It's who the person is. There's also many people who will never be able to create that same kind of socioeconomic benefit just from where they're born, what they've got access to in the country they're in. There's no level playing fields. And so I think we can work more and more how to balance that. And that's why I talk about having money as a mechanism of power. So I'm passionate about conservation and anti-poaching and science, and I can talk about it, or I can say I get to create money and direct it to that, to anti-poaching units, pay towards that. So, but we each have to have our own agency from in it. How are we getting that? Where does that sit? So this when we can start looking at the shame of having it or not having it, we've got to go, what are we believing about ourselves? And when we slow down, what's the fear underneath there? Is it that fear of being judged? Okay. Am I judging others? What's really going on there? What's that story around it? What am I believing about money does and doesn't have? And, I mentioned I grew up at the height of apartheid, and as a civil engineer, I was able to go, and I ended up working all over the world. And I realized that I had a real story around, would Africans be able to afford my products? Once I created the Welsh Chef, there was still almost this patronizing, Africa's broken, she needs rescuing story. Oh, should I have a different price point for that? I also realized that I was able to be very successful in my engineering career as long as I was away from South Africa, because I had a story around, as a white South African, this guilt about just the color of my skin, how I was born through the apartheid side. So there was no. So I could make money elsewhere, but I felt guilty about if I had it here. And I went, wow, I've got some work to do here. Because as long as I held on to that, I was needing to keep a whole continent and a whole group of people broken in order for me to stay with my story of guilt. Because it can only come from believing that, let's say the example of that Africa's broken. So I'm going to another scenario, but I have now, as many African clients who pay the same price point as whatever, because I don't see them as broken. I don't buy into the story of that. But I had to do my own work to be okay and not come with a rescuer energy in order to make me feel okay.
You were going to play the role of white knight because they don't need a white knight.
They don't need rescuing. Nobody else needs rescuing. What I do have to do is own my own integrity and congruency. And is that, but nobody else needs to be rescued by me or anybody else. And I think when we can stop the rescuing energy, there's a huge liberation. When we can come with, I'm okay, you're okay. Let's talk from that conversation.
You mentioned that there is not a level playing field. And I know that you've also helped people with vastly different backgrounds, and apparently people who are as young as 14, people who are as old as in their mid 70s, and people all over the world. Do you have a favorite story of someone who empowered themselves, who rescued themselves using the tools that you offer to help them create?
Oh, God, there's so many stories. And often, my mind just fills up, because I think, we have stories of people in relationship who finally found a way to have money conversations and just that transformative element. But often, the stories, there's one woman that just jumps to mind, Jody, where she had been in quite a dysfunctional relationship, where she was constantly the rescuer, the appeaser in the relationship. She had 3 boys, and her and her partner didn't know how to have clean money conversations. They'd got themselves into debt. The relationship fell apart. She, from that element of not having agency around herself or strong, we can talk about boundaries, but even knowing where it was set, the partner went off and she was left with significant debt. Even though it had been got together, she was left with, and took that responsibility on with 3 boys. And she used her last bit of her credit card money she said something told her to join, Financial Freedom University, which is my signature program. And she didn't tell anybody because she felt she had deep debt. She had no idea how she was going to pay the rent and her food for her boys, but she felt she needed. So every bit of logic told her this was crazy, but she knew she could not keep doing what she was doing. The spiral of guilt, shame, confusion, this debt. And the first step was, there was something about just realizing, nobody's coming. I'm it. Okay. Get out over that depression. The boys, she was in a rented house that she had, and she said, okay, I'm prepared to do what it takes. And that she said that agency, just suddenly accepting the challenge instead of avoiding it, this flood of energy came through. And she moved her boys up into sleep in the same room. She said, we are doing this like a big camp. So for 2 years, they all slept in one room, and she rented out the other rooms in the house to tenants. She took on extra jobs, including dog walking and this and that. She said, I'm going to stop feeling sorry for myself. And I said, choose me and my boys. And then this gamification. And then, yeah, her story is just transformative. I mean, now she's in the UK. She has what they call ISAs, which are like a Roth, like an RR, like your tax-free savings account in Canada, the equivalent for herself and her boys. And she just actually sent me photographs a few weeks ago of them going on their first holiday where they went overseas. They flew on holiday, and she felt this was one of her dreams that she had in this. But I think this story of being able to accept the challenge and go, I'm not broken. Okay. Just take back that agency. There are so many stories that I could share, but I think, sometimes those sound like the more powerful ones, but often it's also just somebody who's felt afraid to fire their financial advisor because this is scary. And this story of, you talk about nobody's coming, of going, I'm that one, and going, that sharing of the power of going, this is not so confusing. Every time somebody goes, yeah, I did that first investment for myself, not, needing that financial advisor, is just the greatest success, and these little liberations. But I think ultimately it's that sense of self-worth, that sense of finding agency that comes from this ripple effect, and this beautiful gift of starting to feel safe to be our true, freaky, fabulous, wonderful selves. When we realize actually we all freaks. We all have a unique, freaky recipe. And when we can go, my job is to have the most fantastic love affair with myself. And that person who's fully in love with themselves can be fully in love with life, can then come. And I truly believe that our greatest purpose, the only purpose we have, is to find our joy, find the thing that lights us up, because our joy meets the world's greatest need, not the other way around. And when we're able to feel safe, when we're able to feel that we actually put the things that are important for us, our health, our exercise, our financial well-being first, and we trust that by doing that, the rest comes in, I think that's the greatest gift we can give to the universe.
I agree with you on that. What advice, Anne, would you have to anyone who's listening right now who feels completely overwhelmed by their financial situation and has no idea where to start with this?
So firstly, deep breath. And one of the hashtags we use in my programs, we have hashtag WTF, but it doesn't stand for what most people think. It's just, wow, that's fascinating. So the key thing is get curious, to go, okay, remember, my money isn't me. How do I separate out money? The problem is it weaves through every aspect. So it's really hard not to feel that our money, how we earn, how we spend, what we do with it, if we have it, if we don't have it, is so intricately linked. So this first is like, my money is not me. It's just the same. So one of the reasons I use the metaphor of the wealth share for the analogy is like, we don't think that the onion sitting in the pantry is us. When you go in there and you're about to make your soup, it's just an onion. We're not charged around it. Maybe something might make you cry, but so if we can first say, money is just like the ingredients in the pantry. Let's see what there is. The pantry might be a bit empty. It might be a bit rotten, but we don't make it about ourselves. Okay, so wow, this is fascinating. Go on that hunt. And then we slow right down. And remember, there's a step-by-step process. So there is a gift for all of your listeners. We call money, wealth made simple, but it starts taking stock. It's okay. So we need to understand what are the components, what money is coming in, where is it coming from, where is it going to? And a lot of people don't want to spend time here because it's deeply enlightening. We get to see what's the story going on, what do we value, how much of our spend is unconscious. So there's a stock taking step. Just what have we got? Debts. What debt do I have? What's the cost of it? So there's a part of just going, let me gather data, and remembering just to keep saying, wow, that's fascinating. Don't just data. Because then with that, we can so there's a stock taking, and then there's a dreaming. Well, what do I want? And when we slow right down and go, what do I want from my life? And often it's just we want a bit more breathing room. We would like to spend a bit more time with friends and family. Well, what does it look like? Would it feel amazing to be able to live your current lifestyle, but without the stress, to know that you're safe? And having assets pay for that. Oh, wow. Yeah, that would feel quite cool. Because often we're fed the story that to be wealthy or rich means Lear jets and standing there with a freaking Lamborghini, and you've got to, I don't know, be X holiday. And when we slow right down, it might sound fun for a day, but for most, actually, I love to be able to, as I say, I love jigsaw puzzles. I have a jigsaw puzzle spread across the table. I look at it and I've got a beautiful home, but it's enough. It's not, it's beautiful for me. What is that? So when we can have that dreaming, and then we go, okay, there's a map between this, where we are, which is just, wow, that's fascinating. There's no judgment. Wow, my net worth is minus X amount. Oh, it's just my starting point. And then we can learn these things. So get support, read the Well-Shaped book, find elements, because it's breaking it down. It's a learned skill. It's like exercising. There's a different set of exercises to get that gorgeous ass, There's some for upper body. You're going to need a mix of all of them, but you're going to get better as you do them. And I think that's what really helps when you have a bit of support to understand, there's these 5 key elements that I need. I understand how they fit together. Great. These are the components. And now I just start automating those. I just do them consistently over and over, and I celebrate the wins.
That's perfect. And you would say the best way to get started with all this is to take you up. And thank you so much for that free gift. I'll put the link in the show notes.
It's a 5-day challenge, but you can watch it as wherever you go. There's a workbook with it, which takes you through these core components, helps you work out what your freedom price tag is right now. So you can work out finally how much is enough. You're not locked into it. And then what are assets? There are 8 different asset classes, where to start investing in stock market. I take you through index tracker investing, these really cool low cost products, how to get out of debt, managing these different, just understanding these key components. And also there is the Wealth Chef book. You can check me out at the Wealth Chef itself, and just start with baby steps. When we really get, to be wealthy is a way of being. It's not a problem to be solved. It's this beautiful unfolding. It's this journey. And that's why I love, there's so many parallels with what you do and I do, because it's not going to the gym once and going, okay, fine, yes, thanks, we're done. It's this beautiful evolution. And whilst there are milestones that we see, we then can start experiencing more and more and defining what is wealthy for me. And for me, wealthy versus rich is having this base, this stuff underneath the iceberg that we don't see. It's that peace of mind. No one can see what's in my balance sheet or my assets, but the above is the joy, is the liberation, is the choice. And that's the riches that come from having a solid base of wealth.
Oh, so good. And I have loved this conversation so much. And I'm sure so many people are going to want to learn more from you, which I highly recommend, and has helped me in my finances so much by taking her courses. So really strongly recommend you take her up on her free gift, which is really very generous. Thank you.
An absolute pleasure. And it is. And, we could go, I would love to talk more about, on the element and the relationship between our body and food and money, because there are so there's so many topics. So this has just been a delight. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Oh, dude. Every time I talk to Anne, I am so impressed with the way she blends mindset and a little bit of woo-woo energy stuff with some brass tacks investment strategies. And you know what she does that always blows me away? She did it on this call. The fact that she coaches people all over the world, and she just fluidly transitions between talking about Canadian TFSAs to American Roth IRAs or UK financial products or the best ETFs on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I swear to God, dude, I just figured out what the Dow Jones was last year. One of my favorite parts of this conversation is about having enough. Something this is never discussed with wealth, because the assumption is more is more, and you're going to have lifestyle creep, so you're probably going to want more. My friend Jocelyn and I once had a conversation about the beauty of the word sufficiency, because it means both the ability to take care of yourself and the idea of enough. Because without connecting to this idea of enough, there's always this anxiety and this stress of just constantly hustling and you're never done. I also loved Anne's line, frameworks create freedom. And, when you're talking about those frameworks, you think, I get to do this, not I have to do this. I'm not depriving myself. I'm giving myself a gift. And I swear, dude, the more you can embrace the frameworks and the habits that will lead to your goal, not as discipline, not as deprivation, but as a gift, dude, your whole world is going to change. There was so much stuff in this interview, but as always, I want to hear what you think. So let me know, and definitely grab Anne's free gift, because that will help you start your wealthy journey. Because like Anne said, money is just energy, and we have the privilege of directing that energy towards the things that mean a lot to us. And listen, if you know someone that you think would be a good steward of that energy of money, dude, make sure you forward this episode to them so that you too can create your beautiful, healthy, wealthy lives together. All right. Until next week. Hey, dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.